Like the title of the video says, we're going to be covering Shemps for Evil Dead, the game. If you look at the bottom of the video, you're going to notice there are chapters and timestamps to jump to the specific section that you want to go to. We are going to be covering a bunch of different topics, including how perks work, how the healing works, how the healing is calculated, how healing radius works, the inventory system, and a couple other small things scattered throughout. So if you want to jump down there and jump around, please feel free. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the inventory system. The inventory system is pretty simple, so we're going to probably get through it pretty quickly. However, a lot of these numbers just kind of aren't said. Nowhere in the game does it actually tell you. You just kind of have to figure out what these numbers mean. So looking back out here at the character selection screen, we can see leaders, warriors, and hunters. They all start with 3 maximum Shemps. That means when they pick up a Shemps, they can only carry 3 at a time. Supports, if you look at their class text, there's a bunch of stuff in there, but it's kind of vague. It doesn't exactly say how many or anything like that, but supports can carry 4 Shemps. Now, if we look into the support tree, there is a perk called the Pocket Shemps Cola. This is only available to supports, so only supports can actually take this and increase it even further. So whereas most characters in the game can have 3, supports start with 4, and using this perk they can get to 5 or even 6 maximum Shemps. Now, Cheryl also has a perk called Cola Coaster that says she can carry more Shemps. It doesn't say how many, again, but that number increases by 2, which means Cheryl can carry 8. So Cheryl can carry a lot of Shemps. The other aspect to the inventory system is how many Shemps you start with. So jumping back out to the character selection screen again, we have leaders, warriors, and hunters. These characters all start with 0 support items. All supports, no matter which one it is, start with at least 1 of both support items. So jumping back in, there is another perk called Packing Pop that will allow you to start with more Shemps. So you start with 1, this will increase to 2 or even 3. Packing Pop is a really great perk if you're dealing with early game pressure. This is especially good on the small map where you're going to get found very quickly usually. So Packing Pop is a great perk. So supports can jump up to 3 using this, and for Cheryl specifically, again, she has a Shemps related perk. Cola Coaster increases that by 1 additional. That means Cheryl can actually start the game with 4. So that pretty much covers the inventory system. Like I said, it's pretty straightforward, it's pretty simple. It's just a matter of figuring out what those numbers actually are because it doesn't tell you. Now, one of the other things that the game doesn't tell you is the fact that the different characters, the different supports in the game, actually have different healing radiuses. So let's talk about healing radius real quick. All of the characters in the game can drink a Shemps. When you drink a Shemps, you will heal yourself. However, when a support drinks a Shemps, they both heal themselves and they heal their allies in a radius around them. That radius is dependent on the character. Whereas Sash and Pablo can only heal for about 5 meters around them, Cheryl actually has a weird hidden buff that happens. So at her level 10 perk, once you unlock that, Cheryl actually goes from having 5 meters to 10 meter radius. So she actually doubles her healing radius when she gets to level 10. Once she gets to level 25, it goes up by an additional 5 meters. This is an absolutely enormous increase in healing area of effect. Not only are you tripling your radius, which is insane by itself, but once you realize how big these circles actually get, you'll kind of understand how many more square feet you're or I guess in this game square meters, you're covering with your healing as Cheryl. So Cheryl can heal in an absolutely massive area around her. This is something important to note because you don't really have to be close to people or aim once you get to higher levels. It makes it extremely powerful and extremely easy to use. So that pretty much covers it for the healing radius perks. And healing radius kind of nuance because it just doesn't say that anywhere in her kit. Let's go ahead and jump into healing numbers next. And I know this might be why a lot of people are here. So there's 2 healing numbers in Evil Dead the game. The first one is the amount that you heal yourself for, and the second one is the amount that a support will heal their allies for in that healing radius we talked about. So let's talk about the first number of how much you heal yourself for. And this is true of all characters in the game. Whenever you use a Shemps, you will heal yourself for 50% of your maximum HP. And I do mean maximum. That means if you take things like Pink F health bonuses, if you take things like industrial strength, or any perks related to HP increases, these will all affect the amount of healing that you give yourself. Now, it will not increase the percentage. It's not like you're going to be healing 60% because, you have more life. Industrial strength doesn't increase that percentage, but it does increase that maximum amount, which makes that percentage stronger, right? So in general, warriors are going to heal more when they drink a Shemps for themselves than any other class. And the reason is because they have way more HP than the other classes. Now, there's also a second component to this, and the main reason why you should always let supports, or not always, but most of the time, let supports drink the Shemps. When a support drinks the Shemps in that healing radius, they will heal for a flat 360 HP. That 360 HP is not affected by the amount of health that you have. Increasing your maximum health does not increase outgoing healing. If you're healing a person with higher HP, it will not increase just because they have higher HP. And you may have actually sort of noticed this, that when you as a support drink a Shemps and you're next to a Henry that has all the health perks, you basically barely move his bar. And this can be kind of important. So sometimes it might be more valuable, because your number is a flat amount, just to let your warrior drink his Shemps themselves, especially if everybody else is kind of topped off already. So that 360 number doesn't seem like a lot, but for other characters than warriors, like leaders and hunters and supports, it's a much larger percentage of their health pool. Now, that number is actually increased by a perk called Shemps Plus. Let's go ahead and start talking about Shemps Plus now. Shemps Plus restores the amount of health when you drink a Shemps Cola. Now, the cool thing about Shemps Plus is that it increases the outgoing healing for your support, your actual support radius healing for all your other allies, and it increases the amount that you heal yourself for. So let's talk about the self-healing first. Whenever you heal for 50%, this actually does increase that percentage. Now, it isn't additive. That means it isn't the 50% plus the 30%. It's multiplicative. That means you're going from 50%, and then you're multiplying that by 1.3 to give yourself the extra 30%, and you end up with a number around 65% of your health. This isn't as insane as 80%. It doesn't sound as good, but it's still really, really good. Now, for the outgoing healing, you go from having 360 healing to 396 pretty much always. The reason is because Shemps Plus is your first node. You have to travel through it. You just have to if you want to have a build at all. So that means your base healing, even though it's technically 360, it's really more like 396 because you have to put at least 1 point in. Now, if you took that from 1 point all the way up to maximum at 4 points, you're going to have 468 healing on your Shemps. Now, that's about a 72 point increase for those last 3 points. I think they're always worth it. If you were to compare the difference between having Shemps Plus and not having Shemps Plus, it's about 108 healing, which you'll notice is slightly stronger than contact healing. So that does give you a much larger boost to your outgoing healing and your incoming healing. So now let's talk about contact healing, because I've seen this question a couple times. From what I've been able to test, and it's pretty hard to test in this game and get really accurate numbers just because of the way the bars work and everything, but from what I can tell, contact healing, that 100 extra HP, is not affected by Shemps Plus. That means this isn't 130 health if you have Shemps Plus. It's still just the flat 100. So the way the formula ends up working is you take the base amount of outgoing healing, which is 360, you multiply that by the 1.3 from Shemps Plus, and then at the end, once you have your answer, you just add in another 100 on top of it. That means if you have a max Shemps Plus as Cheryl, you go from having 468 healing to 568 healing for allies. This is really, really powerful. It allows you to burst heal your allies a lot stronger on Cheryl than on the other support classes. Now, one thing to note about contact healing is the fact that it does say nearby teammates. This does not increase the healing that you give yourself when you drink a Shemps. It is only for allies, so that's kind of an important thing to know. It might not be as good as you originally thought if you thought it applied to yourself as well. The final thing that I want to talk about for Shemps is the fact that on Cheryl specifically, Contact Courage reduces fear when you drink a Shemps. This hits everybody that gets hit by the Shemps, so it's very easy to do. So it's a pretty straightforward skill. It doesn't really affect your healing per se, but it is a nice utility. So I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover for Shemps. If I missed anything or misrepresented anything, please let me know in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.